Hey guys, Tyler2K here, and this is the good, the bad, and the I have no idea of the Season 2 Tekken Talk. A few days ago, Namco held their Season 2 Tekken Talk, where they showed off both Anna, as well as a few upcoming changes to the characters in Season 2. Since I was out of the country and you've probably seen a few full breakdowns, I figured we'll do a recap instead, detailing the things that I like, the things that I hate, and a few things that are in between. Because good is subjective, I'll keep my more controversial choices towards the end and better explain them as well. Lydia was in a weird spot where if you hit your opponent with your heat smash, you wouldn't gain any charges of Heaven and Earth. Now in the next patch you'll always get one charge, even if used mid-combo. Anna down forward 1-2-4 on counter hit no longer leads to a launcher, but instead leads to a heat engager. Hopefully that's a good sign for other counter hit strings in Season 2. Asasena running 3-2 can now transition to leap stance, a compromise between her old nerf and her new style, which is great because she has new tricks out of leap stance as well. This is very reminiscent of Katarina, who received similar buffs in Season 3 of Tekken 7. By adding more ways to access her stances, she became a much more viable character. And speaking of currently mediocre characters, Zafina's getting some nice quality of life buffs in Season 2. Both speed changes and safety changes of her down forward 4 string are huge buffs indeed. I have to make a preemptive shout out to Namco for making an option like Anna down back 4 launch punishable on block. They could have easily made it not transition on block, they could have made it safer on block, but they obviously went out of their way to properly balance the character at least somewhat. And on the topic of punishable attacks, it's been a long time coming, but Jin finally got nerfed. 2-1-4 is now -10. Down 2 no longer counter hit launches. And side sway is finally also -10. It just makes me wonder why it took a year for this to happen. Now, as much as I dislike the heat engager to full crouch mix-up, I do like that Namco added a new animation to signify if you go into FC or not. And furthermore, an attack like Yoshi Low Sword Sweep also does require extra frames for it to come out. I theorized this in one of my latest videos, but it's good to see confirmation of this fact. Now let's talk about the bad. I'm going to go ahead and start with Anna Williams first because she's brand new, and then we'll move on to the rest of the cast. To be honest, I'm not sure where I wanted to start with Anna, but let's go ahead and start with probably the most controversial one, Running 3. Running 3-2 is an instant sliding low into S-low Tom attack. Under the effects of heat mode, Running 3-2 becomes supercharged, dealing more than 60 damage in a 3-hit salvo. But the damage not even the worst part. On block it's actually -1, and if your opponent's by the wall, it's actually plus frames causing a wall crush animation. And to top it off, it only costs 5 seconds of heat mode. That means from Heat Burst you can perform it twice, or under the effects of Heat Engager you can do it 3 times, where 3 times 60 is 180 damage, dealing lethal damage for a -1 on block low. My second choice is for Anna's Heat Smash. In Season 2, Heat Smashes are universally getting nerfed, but for some reason Anna seems to have a really strong one even compared to Season 1, because not only is an I-13 mid, it also leaves the poison debuff on your opponent, and to top it all off, seems to high crush as well. For some less egregious examples, we have an option like Anna 2-2, a brand new string that leads into a stance automatically on hit, yet is safe on block. Luckily it's not NC, but on counter hit it's fully guaranteed, leading to a stance mix-up. Like Mitchell in IGN video said, I think 4-4-3-2 is going to be one of Anna's strongest attacks, an advancing long-range mid that leads to heat engager, that can only be stepped if you're able to evade the first hit, but tracks on the second hit. What seems nasty is unlike an option like Dragunov 4-3-1+2, you cannot jab interrupt 4-4-3-2. And similar to Heihachi up forward 4, Anna has up forward 3-1 out of heat mode, a +4 on block option that leaves the debuff effect on your opponent. Now my final complaint about Anna that leads to the rest of the cast. Anna forward 2 has so much range now. Granted, it's no longer +6, only +4, but the amount of range on it is insane. There's so much range and they're so prolific now that I'm going to call them aerial denial attacks. Attacks designed to not only hit your opponent at long range, but to hit them in such a great area that they are unable to avoid it. The good news is that most of them seem to require meter, but the bad news is you have to deal with the plus frames afterwards. But of course Tekken is full of exceptions, so some are gated behind stances, yet other ones like Anna 1+2 require no stance or heat at all. While I do like Asasena getting more options to enter into lead, I don't like the design of moves like lead down 3, moves that seem to do everything and have a ton of catch-alls. For instance, a plus frame on block mid that's a counter hit launcher and high crushes seems to be a little bit overtuned. And speaking of overtuned, Asusana getting running 3-2 into +5 leap stance is fine, but why does Jin get a running 3 that goes from +6 to +12 when he enters into Zen stance? But we can't mention overtuned without also bringing up King. I'm not quite sure why they gave King a stronger version of JGR, such that he has level 2 JGR with new properties. This is very reminiscent of Hypnotist stance for Xiaoyu in Tekken 8, where the longer she holds a stance, the scarier the stance becomes. But in actuality, the idea probably came from Gigas in his goal stance, where the longer he held the goal stance, the more damage he did, but at the same time never got any sort of buffs, giving bonus properties to set attacks. Last but not least, and I'm not singling out Jin here, but giving seemingly all the characters strong aerial tailspin states is going to boost the damage to the stratosphere. Even Nakatsu's open field wall stand I-14 launcher is dealing 79 damage. Now imagine if it's better optimized. And finally, we have the I have no idea what's going to happen. Namco showed off that even off-axis combos will now automatically realign with your opponent, and while it's a great change for beginners, I fear it's going to make combos more homogenized and have less expression. There's also a lot of what-ifs that Namco simply hasn't shown us. What happens if your opponent is back-turned when you perform a combo? What happens if you side-splat the opponent, for instance? Is side-splat still a thing? Is this designed to possibly get rid of like wall infinites? We simply don't have enough information. Speaking of system-wide changes, the key charge change was a controversial one, and while I'm not exactly happy about it, I do like the idea of what it might present for the future. Similar to taunts and third strike, it might make it so that key charge gives you access to various properties or buffs. It's funny because characters like Leo had that same property prior to Tekken 8, but now they have none of the risk that key charge presents and have an install instead. Another universal change is the change to heat smashes at a stance. Instead of requiring all your meter, they are now heat-enhanced attacks instead. I don't like the idea of having multiple per heat, nor the idea that it's probably still only a few characters who have access to it, but I do like the idea that you can low parry them. But I further like the idea that that probably means the characters with low heat smashes right now are probably getting new or buffed versions of their attacks, because there's currently way too much variance between them. Some of them are safer relative to others, but also at the same time I think most people prefer the mid version anyway. Another crazy change was the defender taking 5 damage when they successfully broke out of throws. Luckily, at the time of making this video, Namco had posted that they're getting rid of it, but who knows, maybe they'll add it again in the future. Now this one is probably specific to Asuka, but it's weird to see a bleed over attack like Forward 2 from June making it to her, where instead of costing health, it costs Nanu a Gusto. If this is safe on block while still being a natural hit launcher, a lot of people are going to be really angry. Okay. I know I've made this video multiple times at this point, but Namco specifically said that these colors are hints to the upcoming DLC characters. And I'm going to go ahead and stick to my guns here. I believe that dark blue is going to be either Lei or possibly Julia/JC. Granted, the last time that Namco showed Julia, she was green instead. I also don't want to discount one of my other theories that it could be Bruce Irving, considering the color of his trunks. For purple/autumn, I think it might be Ganryu, Armor King, or possibly Kuni 1/Kuni 2. Hearing that light blue or winter was a brand new character and not a guest character, I'm pretty sure I know who it is. As we've already talked about, Ganryu is such an unpopular character that bringing him back is probably not the best idea. So what I think Namco is going to do is they're going to go into the archives and go for a character who is supposed to be in Tekken Revolution, and that character is Ganmi-chan. She is, and I quote, a teenage female sumo wrestler who idolizes Ganryu. A character sketch was completed several years ago, and the result was of a cute character like you would find in Idolmaster. At least, that's who I hope it is, and not something stupid like Devil Reina.